were things such as drug deals that went on that we didn't hear about. The actual possible drug deal that Mr. Simpson was making when they were going to Nicole had with OJ's best friend. The car chase that he had these disguises and this money.
That's the foreman of the Simpson jury, Armanda Cooley, explaining how now she might have a different view of Simpson's guilt or innocence based on what she's found out since the verdict. Hi, everybody. I'm Geraldo Rivera. Here's what one of the jurors said about a key witness. He looked like a snake, a skinhead, a member of the KKK. That's what the foreman, the same Armanda Cooley, had to say about none other than Mark Fuhrman. But, and this is the big news because you heard that last night, listen to this quote. There was not a single complaint about planting evidence. They were racist remarks made by Fuhrman on that notorious tape come to us from none other than the Los Angeles Public Defender's Office. The legal aid office, as it were, here in this side of the country. That office has just completed a review of 35 cases dating back to 1988 in which Fuhrman was the investigating lead detective. And reportedly, the Public Defender's Office has found no reason whatsoever to reopen any of the Fuhrman cases. The public defender's conclusion is, of course, interesting, but it is of little interest to my first guest. John Quinlan Kelly is the defense attorney and former prosecutor who is now representing the family of Nicole Brown. I think it's fair to say he's more than happy with some of the things the jurors have been saying over the last couple of days about reassessing their view of Simpson's guilt or innocence. Are you not, John Q?
Very happy, Geraldo.
How does it help? How does it impact you?
Well, I think it's good just to come out and hear the jurors looking at all the evidence, some of the evidence that they didn't see at trial, a lot of the evidence that we're contemplating, and some that we intend to use at the civil trial, and see what their reaction is to it.
Will you, for instance, use the Bronco chase?
It's something we're looking at, Geraldo. I don't want to discuss specific tactics right now, but as I said, there are a lot of things and a lot of options we have right now going into the civil trial that were not used at the criminal trial.
Is it fair to assume, John, I understand you don't want to tip your hand, but is it not fair to assume that you will go much further into domestic violence than was done at the criminal case?
There will be the issue of domestic violence presented. I think it's going to set the table. It's going to make a lot of things clear. It goes to motive, it goes to intent, and it's going to be out there, Geraldo.
Specifically, what was said by these jurors in the last couple of days, and I just interviewed the three of them on my daytime show that airs on Monday. What was said that gives you reason to feel optimistic?
Well, I don't know. First of all, the thing about Mark Fuhrman I want to address a little bit. The Simpson camp is pointing out the spin that this is going to be a big issue again. I think Mr. Bailey's come out and said this trial is about a glove and a hat.
He said that, yeah.
This trial is about two young people, Nicole Brown Simpson, Ron Goldman, that were brutally murdered. And once again, they're trying to fall back on the old LAPD conspiracy issue. And Geraldo, quite frankly, there's only one conspiracy that's really clearly demonstrated here, and that's that someone on a hot June night put on gloves, put on a cap, went out in the dead of night and brutally murdered two people. And that's a conspiracy that the world is going to see and has seen already.
But why won't we assume that Mark Fuhrman will be used as the, the punching bag by F. Lee Bailey again, influencing this next jury?
I don't think it's going to happen, Geraldo. I think Mark Fuhrman is going to be a bit player or even a non-issue in the civil trial. Presumably he's going to take the fifth. He's not going to answer any questions. He's not a party to the action, and the jury will not see him taking the fifth and will not be instructed to make any reasonable inferences as to his taking the fifth in the civil trial. It's not going to be there. It's not going to be a big thing.
I've asked this of Mr. Brewer. I've asked this of Dan Petrocelli. I ask you, are you worried that Lee Bailey is now involved?
Not at all. I mean, that's very nice that he's in the case, and I look forward to meeting him and seeing him in court and depositions and things like that. But I think, hey, Mr. Simpson is putting together a small army of legal talent once again, and he's going to the well. He's doing what's ever necessary to fight this off again.
And he's being bankrolled by a $4 million insurance policy.
He's being bankrolled. He's obviously not sparing the coins and putting his legal defense together, and it's going to be tough. We have a battle on that front, and we were talking about that earlier. I mean, it's a very expensive proposition, and he's got the resources right now, and he's also making a lot of money on his infomercial and things like that, and I mean, he's sparing no expense once again.
How do you feel about the tape? His tape?
Well, I just, rather shameless. I don't want to really comment on it. I'm looking forward to seeing the whole thing. But here's a man who went into court mid-November. His attorney sought a protective order on the deposition and the videotaping. He said he didn't want to taint the jury pool. He didn't want any prejudicial pretrial information coming out on the case, and he wanted to try this case in court, not in the public eye. And as soon as he had the opportunity to cash in on it commercially, make some money, he wanted to make sure he got that out in the public eye, in a slanted view, not subject to cross-examination, not under oath, and put it out there in the public and try to influence him. I don't think anybody's buying it, and, you know, he tried.
I think people are buying it. The question of whether they're believing it is another issue.
Well, when I said buying it, I meant buying his story, not the tape. Hopefully nobody's buying that tape, Geraldo.
By your mere presence here on the East Coast, John, may I assume that the deposition of Simpson will not begin this week?
It wasn't going on today, Geraldo.
I've asked everybody. It's become my mandatory question. All right, let me introduce the rest of our panel. We've got a great panel to discuss these statements by these jurors, the role or non-role Furman will play in the civil case, the latest developments, and later in the program, certainly, we're going to bring you up to date on that murder trial involving the people accused of killing Michael Jordan's dad. But let me introduce our panel. I am very pleased to welcome a first-time guest to Rivera Live. This is Nancy Grace, an assistant district attorney in Fulton County, Georgia, which of course includes the city of Atlanta. She's known down in Dixie as Amazing Grace. This former civil attorney has compiled a perfect record since becoming a prosecutor in 1987. 53 convictions, 0 losses. That's even better than the Chicago Bulls.
Thank you.
But you have a serial murder case now?
I do. Can't comment on the evidence, but I do have a murder case coming up very shortly. The parallels to this case are very interesting. However, there's not a video, $1 million video in the works, but it is coming up very shortly.
Your comments on the video?
Well, I believe counsel said it pretty succinctly. I think it's a shameless effort to profit off of a double homicide. I have compared it often to blood money. Now, the producer of that video is not happy with me saying that, but that's what it appears to be to me. And if the American public wants to buy it, I'm just very embarrassed for them.
Jeanette Harris. Hi, Jeanette.
Hi.
How you doing? Jeanette joining us from Los Angeles. She, of course, the former Simpson juror who was dismissed from the panel last April, supposedly for not reporting some incident of domestic violence that had occurred early in her marriage. But Jeanette, we're delighted to have you back on the program. What do you think of the video?
I feel like OJ needed to talk. He wanted to talk, and he followed the advice of his learned counsel not to speak during the trial. And that's what he paid them for, that type of advice, and he was a smart person to follow it. I think that his personality, it appears to be one that he has a need to talk. He, from the beginning, maintained that he is innocent. I don't see it as blood money as opposed to let me set the record straight. That's how I view it.
What do you think of the jurors coming out and saying now, if they knew now what they knew then, or if they knew then what they know now, let me get that straight. If they knew then what they know now, a couple of them said that they might rule Simpson guilty, at least under the rules of a civil trial.
I was kind of confused when the jurors said that last night on the show. The way they explained it was that they did not feel that OJ was guilty. One of them specifically said that she didn't believe he had enough time to go home and clean up after committing such acts. They're weighing the evidence, which is the same evidence. I believe that even though you're talking about reasonable doubt as opposed to preponderance, the credibility of that evidence is still the questionable thing that's in my mind. At this point, not the prosecution, but both sides, neither side in the civil case has presented anything for me to base an opinion on. Obviously, they both feel that they have a strong case in either direction, and I'd be interested to see just what the Goldman and the Brown's attorneys have to present to say that OJ is guilty. I'm interested, and I have a feel for what the OJ's attorneys would say. But I don't know how they made that decision.
Blood money. Leo Terrell, in your usual mild-mannered way, this criminal defense attorney, civil rights attorney, outspoken supporter of the Simpson family during the trial. Blood money?
I don't think it's blood money. There's two good reasons why O.J. Simpson's out there doing a video. It's called Sidney and Justin. He has a right to earn a living. And my colleague, the prosecutor from Georgia, I like her interpretation of Marsha Clark taking $4.2 million worth of blood money on her participation as a public servant. So I disagree with that. I disagree with the concept that O.J. Simpson has a right. He has a right to earn a living. He has a right to support his family. And he is not required to answer questions based on what other people want him to say. He has a right to present his own forum.
All right. Juror Furor, we're calling this one. That's the title. Back in a flash, folks. I think it will be an interesting hour. Stay tuned.
I think he knows something about it. I don't think that he did it himself, but I think he definitely knows something about it.
If he did it, he had help. I don't believe he could have done it by himself.
But do you think he was involved in their deaths?
He could have been.
Anybody could have been. Do you think he was involved in their deaths?
I will not stand to say that without any more evidence than I have now. But it is a possibility he could have done it with help, though.
I think that Mr. Simpson is aware of who's involved in doing it. I don't think he personally did it.
But they didn't prove it.
But they did not prove that to me.
Jeanette Harris, what do you think now? With what you know now, as opposed to what you knew then, do you think it's possible he was involved, Mr. Simpson?
I have no idea. And, you know, when I was a juror on the trial, he wasn't on trial for being involved or being aware or knowing. He was on trial for did he murder those two people. And like I said before, the prosecution did not prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he did it.
What do you think of Mark Furman?
When Mark Furman came on the stand, I was bothered with his presence.
Were you bothered immediately as Armanda Cooley, the foreman, says, the minute she saw him, and she said this on my daytime show today, the minute she saw him, she said in her mind, snake, skinhead with hair, KKK member? Were you that
I didn't see skinhead. I saw a very well-groomed, really polished, cool, calm, and collective person. It's really interesting that Armanda's perception is totally opposite of mine. I sit directly behind Armanda, and my vantage point may have even been a little bit better because I was elevated. And what bothered me about Mark Furman was that he was so cool, whereas she says he was squirming and, you know, things of that nature. And I guess it goes to say that eyewitness accounts are somewhat different. It depends on the person and, you know, the perception that they are coming from.
You really sound like you've had a life-expanding experience. Roll tape, see, Jim, you got it? Here's more from the jurors.
The police did have a great deal to do with it, and a lot of it was just minor things. Why would they just, Van Adder and Foreman, just not admit to things that he talked to Van Adder, he talked to the Fiata brothers, and Foreman did use the N-word.
Sitting there in the jury panel watching Furman when he first came to the stand, to the witness stand, and based on his behavior, you knew that he was a liar. And you knew that he had used the N-word. And as Bess had indicated before, if they would have just said, yes, you know, I've used it, you know, I'm trying to make amends and change my ways now, and, you know, it would have meant a lot.
Knowing how these jurors feel and felt about Mark Furman, as you sit there tonight, John, you're still not worried that the defense in the civil case will play the same game?
At this point, I'm very confident Mr. Furman's going to be taking the Fifth Amendment and won't be testifying to anything, answering any questions, and not be a pivotal player in this case.
Do you think it's as simple as the fact that a West Side predominantly white jury will see him differently than a downtown predominantly black jury did?
I don't think they're going to be looking at him too much. I think they're going to be looking at the evidence in this case. There's just an abundance of evidence in this case, Geraldo, that has nothing to do with Mark Furman and this glove.
It's not just about a hat and a glove, as Bailey said. I'll come right back.